Gonna try a little bit more of this water. Oh, well. Hopefully not the Rona. Alright. Chapter 3. Tommy's best friend Buckeye arrived in Harlem in 1920 when he was 16 years old. At 14, he left the tiny Caribbean island of Montserrat to work on the Panama Canal, and from Panama made his way to the United States, to Harlem. He arrived expecting to do the same work he'd done on the canal, construction, but soon found out what Otis Tester had long known. The Negroes had no protection. Buckeye broke an ankle at the age of 17 and found himself out of day labor for 2 months. When he was ready to return, the job had been filled. And besides that, the ankle never healed well. He couldn't be on it for long hours, couldn't tote much weight without giving it out. Soon he found his way to Madame St. Clair's and her famous numbers game. She hired him because she needed men from the Caribbean, who knew and would be trusted by the recent West Indian immigrants. Madame St. Clair evolved in changing times, and because of this she thrived. The regular kickbacks to local police also helped. Buckeye met Tommy Tester in the milieu. Tommy played at a club where Buckeye made business. One evening, Buckeye settled next to Tommy at the bar and asked where he'd learned to sing so badly. Did he take lessons or was it a natural gift? They became fast friends. Now, Tommy Tester led his father out of the building and down the block. He'd returned home from the encounter with Albert Sudham, with Malone and the private detective, and felt himself in need of a night out. It took time to convince Otis to step out. Otis never left the apartment, hardly left his bedroom. He'd become like a dog gone into the dark so he could die alone. But Tommy had different plans, or maybe he needed his father too much to let him go easily. Buckeye left an open invitation for Tommy at the Victorian Society. It was on 137th Street. The walk was a mere 7 blocks, but because of his father's health, it took them half an hour to arrive. The Victorian Society consisted of 3 modest rooms on the second floor of an apartment building. It was a Caribbean social club. Down on the street, Tommy and Otis were in the Black Harlem. In the Victorian Society, they entered the British West Indies. The flags of every Caribbean nation were fixed to the walls of a long hallway. A much larger Union Jack hung at the far end. At the doorway to the Warren of Rooms, Tommy Tester had to give Buckeye's name 3 times. The greeter at the door remained unmoved until Tommy used Buckeye's given name, George Hurley. That worked like a spell. Tommy and Otis followed the greeter at the... Let me try that again. Tommy and Otis followed the greeter at a distance. One of the society's rooms was reserved for men playing card games or bones. The second showed men in lounge chairs smoking and listening to music played at a respectable volume. And the third had card tables set out with tablecloths and chairs, for meals. Buckeye had invited Tommy to the Victorian Society many times in the years since they'd made friends. But Tommy had never come until now, and he felt a sting, like a slap, across his face. This was the place he described to Ma'at, the shorthand for a den of crime and sin, the place where Harlem's worst criminals were too afraid to go. He had assumed he knew what kind of place this would be. Buckeye ran numbers for the most famous female gangster in New York City. So why wouldn't the Victorian Society be like those legendary opium dens? Or had Tommy simply assumed terrible things about this wave of West Indian immigrants? The American Negroes in Harlem got up to awful gossip about those newcomers, and now he'd come to find the Victorian Society might as well be a British tea room. He felt slightly disappointed. He'd brought his father because he'd meant to show his dad a scandalous night. He'd heard women dance to nearly nothing, so close they practically sat in your lap. Being inside now, seeing this place truly, was like learning another world existed within, or alongside, the world he'd always known. Worse, all this time he'd been too ignorant to realize it. The idea troubled him like a pinched nerve. Tommy and his dad sat, and the older man blew out a deep breath. Otis spent a long time adjusting himself in the chair to minimize his back pain. He moved like someone ancient. Otis Tester was 41 years old. A thin woman came to the table offering dinner she'd made in her kitchen, then brought here to sell. She was Trinidadian. Her dinner plates were already prepared, and she rolled them through the dining room on a cart. Sahina, pineapple chow, and a macaroni pie. A bowl of cow heel soup, tall cups of passion fruit juice. The whole meal for both men came to $1. Tommy paid. I don't know what any of this mess is, Otis said, watching the plate in front of him like it might strike. Why didn't we go down to Bo's place? Tommy found himself watching the Trinidadian woman because she reminded him of his own mother. That wiry frame and splay-footed walk. Irene Tester, gone 4 years now. People who knew her well used to call her Michigan, because she never could stop talking about the place where her parents came from. She collapsed on a bus, died 37 years old among strangers. Life as a domestic wore her out just as surely as construction did Otis. Tomlin looked at his father, wondering if it had also been thinking the Trinidadian woman looked like Irene. But the old man only stared down at the plates, mystified. Come on now, Tommy said. There's something here you're going to like. Otis scanned the table, looking for something he recognized. He lifted a fork and poked at the macaroni pie. This is just cheese and noodles, yeah? Tommy Tester sank a fork and knife into his serving. He brought a portion to his mouth and chewed. After swallowing, he nodded, but his father prodded at it anyway, as if he didn't trust his son. He set the fork down without eating. Now, you say this white man is going to pay you how much? $400. All that just to play at his party? Otis asked. He grabbed the cup of passion fruit juice, brought it to his nose, sniffed, set the drink back down. All that for you to play at his party? Tommy chewed at a bite of the pineapple chow. It was sweet, but the kick of lime juice and hot pepper followed soon after. He gulped his juice to cool his throat. That's what he said. Otis raised his hands in the air, held them as far apart as he could. That's the distance between what a white man says to a Negro and what he really means. Tommy knew this, of course. Hadn't he lived 20 years in America already? His whole hustle, entertainment, was predicated on the idea that people had ulterior motives for hiring him. But when he dressed in those frayed clothes and played at the blues man or the jazz man or even the docile Negro, he knew the roles bestowed a kind of power upon him. Give people what they expect and you can take from them all that you need. They won't realize you've juiced them until they're dry. Ma had especially paid him to deliver a worthless item, hadn't she? If he had to play the role of quasi-gangster to get paid, then so be it. He played the roles needed to enrich his bank account. But all this would sound criminal to Otis, or demeaning. The man had an outsized opinion of dignity. Nobility didn't pay well enough to make Tommy want the job. I'll be real careful, Daddy. Otis Tester watched his son quietly. The rest of the dining room grew louder as more tables filled, but a kind of quiet, a bubble of reserve, surrounded their table. Otis was the father to a 20-year-old black boy who'd blithely explained he'd be going out to Flatbush in the middle of the night, into the home of a white man. He might as well have told his father he planned to go wrestle a bear. When I left Oklahoma City, Otis Tester said, I rode on the railroads, hoboed all the way east. Not the first time, nor the 500th time Tommy Tester had heard this story. Tommy ate to keep from expressing his disappointment. Hadn't Otis heard the most vital detail? $400. I avoided crossing Arkansas, Otis continued. Whether you were Negro, white, or a red man, they were pretty rough on hoboing in Arkansas. They had chain gangs, you know. I went to East St. Louis over to Evansville. I got taken off the train once in Decatur. I wasn't making a direct route here. I was real young, so I had the need to see much more than my final destination. Finally, Otis Tester ate the macaroni pie as if storytelling had sparked his appetite. He took one bite, chewed cautiously, but after he swallowed the first, he chomped down 2 more. Like I said, they took me off the train in Decatur, and that's what it turned out. I had used my head. Now, he took the risk of a drink. The passion fruit juice clearly pleased him. He slipped slowly, then set the drink down. I had to use this. Otis Tester unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt right there in the dining room. Tommy stiffened, feeling like a 5-year-old whose daddy was about to shame him in public. But before he could scold his father or reach over and try to cover Otis' exposed skin, the old man pulled something from around his neck. It was hanging there on a coarse string. He slipped it off and clutched it in one rough hand while he buttoned his shirt again. Tommy leaned forward, trying to see what his dad held. Otis Tester extended his hand and opened it. A straight razor lay in his palm. I carried this with me the whole time I rode the trains, Otis said. White man, Negro, or Red Indian was not going to get an easy shot at me. He knocked one end of the razor on the table loudly. In the cater, I made some people understand this, Otis said. Tommy looked from the razor to his father. All his life he'd known his dad and mom as pillars that solidly, stolidly, held up the roof of Tommy's world. Reliable, supportive, but not particularly remarkable people. To think of Otis now, suddenly, as a teenage boy who defended himself with this weapon. That past became yet another world, a new dimension, of which Tommy had just become aware. Again, the pain of such a revelation. Tommy Tester took the straight razor from his father's hand. When he did, he could see the man's thick fingers trembling. You're a grown man, and I can't stop you from making your way, Otis said. I wouldn't even want to. But you don't walk into that white man's house unarmed or unaware. Anything goes bad, you get out, and you get back to me. Tommy Tester nodded, but didn't speak. He simply couldn't right then. I don't care if you got to spill blood to do it, but you get out of that house at the end of the job, and you get back to me. Otis meant to sound stern, determined, commanding, but Tommy realized he'd never before seen his father look so scared. You hear me? Otis asked. Yes, sir, Tommy finally said. They ate quietly, and when the food was done, they left the Victorian Society, down a flight of stairs and back to the Harlem. In 3 nights, Tommy would visit Robert Sundham's mansion. He understood the journey now as travel to another universe. No wonder his father felt fear. His son was about to go so far. Why'd you bring that razor with you tonight, Tommy said. I never knew you owned the thing. Told me he was taking me to that damn Victoria Society, Otis said, almost laughing. Thought I might need the strop if those Caribbeans got wild. Is that supposed to be the strap? But I think you and me was the most dangerous Negroes in the place. Tommy had one arm looped through his father's to help the old man walk. His other hand was in his slacks, clutching the weapon. If you're going to play at that party, Otis Tester said as they ambled back uptown, I've got one more song you should learn. It's old, but it's got something to it. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? The razor is one way I want to arm you. This song is the other. Your mother taught it to me. Conjure music. We'll practice for the next 3 days till you got it. Conjure music. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Pop, Tommy Tester said. Late night in Harlem on a Friday and the streets more full than at rush hour. Tommy Tester cherished the closeness to his father and to all the bodies on the sidewalks, in their cars, riding buses, perched on stoops. The traffic and human voices merged into a terrific buzzing that seemed to lift Tommy and Otis, a song that accompanied them, carried them, all the way home.